The water pump in my Toyota GR Yaris's engine has failed. A lot of you who followed me for a long time, you know that I've been nursing a coolant issue. In fact, I bought this car a year and a half ago, certified pre-owned, so under warranty. Pretty much immediately after purchasing my car, I noticed that there were coolant splatters on the side of my engine. Now, a lot of Japanese performance cars, they have this pressure release valve at their coolant reservoir, and that'll spit out coolant if the temperature and the pressure builds up a bit. Either way, I wanted to get it checked out by Toyota, make sure everything was good. I took it in because I did notice that the coolant level was also not great, and I didn't know if that was because of this splashing or there was another issue. So I took it to Toyota and I said, here's what's going on. I've noticed some coolant splashes at the side of my engine. Could you check it out? They checked it out, and the funny thing is, the very first time the tech, he saw that issue, he said, I wonder if it's a failed water pump. That's what he said to me. He said that it's quite common on Toyotas, and that was a surprise because I hadn't heard of that, right? On the GR Corollas, GR Yarises, you don't hear much about failed water pumps. And then when they came back, Toyota, they said, actually, we think it's a bubble in your coolant system. It probably wasn't properly bled out when they did the coolant change. These cars have a coolant change maintenance regime that's quite impressive. You're changing your coolant pretty often. So they said, look, the last dealership that did it, they must have just had an air bubble. So we'll just redo it. They redid that. I went away. And then I noticed again that my coolant, this time I really noticed my coolant was decreasing, right, over time between services. I waited till my next service and I raised it with them again. And I said, look, you did this last time, but my coolant level is still decreasing, enough for me to notice. What do you think it is? So they went back and they replaced my cap. So I've got a video of that on my page where they replaced my coolant cap. And I understand sort of the hierarchy that they were working towards. I'm an engineer, and from an engineering perspective as well, you don't want to throw everything at a problem immediately. You want to understand the nature of the problem, right? You're not going to just replace an entire engine just because the owner is mentioning that there's a bit of coolant loss. You want to understand it. So Toyota believed it might have been the cap. They did that. Again now, I'm about to go on a cruise and I've just noticed some coolant loss. This is for the third time, right? And I've just booked in my major service, which is around $750. That does a bunch of filters, oil change, but also the transfer case oil change, the diff fluid as well, tire rotation, a bunch of other things and checks. So I've booked that in, and I'm going to raise this with Toyota as well. In the meantime, I've bought coolant bottle, Toyota pink coolant. Just going to top it up in the meantime because I don't want to drive it on low coolant. This time the loss has been quite impressive. And what I have noticed, guys, and I'll put a clip, I'll superimpose a clip, a wet patch, a wet spot at the bottom of my engine bay. And that leads me to believe that it's the water pump that's leaking. You know, it's a couple of reasons. First of all, I've been checking my coolant tank and my engine oil pretty religiously. And the reason for that is I want to make sure there's no mixing, because when oil and coolant mix, that's a head gasket issue or a very serious issue. And I've noticed that my oil's been good without any coolant contamination. My coolant's been good without any oil contamination. So the systems are good. The only other thing I can really think of is a water pump. You know, that wet patch under my engine really corroborates that story. Now, the issue is that with my water pump, I can see it's a belt-driven water pump. I can't really see any coolant around or near it. But I believe it might be leaking from below, and that's what I can't visually spot without putting it up on a lift. So that's what I'm going to do, guys. I've booked in my service, going to take it to Toyota. Next time I check in with you, I'm probably going to be in a different car because this is going to be getting its stuff done by Toyota. Hopefully they find that it's a water pump as well, and I think that should resolve this year-long thing that I've been dealing with. Now, I did want to mention and discuss how this makes me feel about Toyota, and you'll see on my page that I'm often praising Toyotas for reliability, for the good resale, for just good ownership experiences, and I still believe in that. But on my page, I've always been quite realistic as well, and I've said, look, the GR cars, they're not like your Camrys and your Corollas and your RAVs, right? These follow a different ethos, and overall, I haven't been super happy with Toyota, right? They did it with the BRZ and 86 cars. That's a Subaru. Nothing wrong with Subaru, but the Subaru reliability has never been to Toyota standard, especially with their transmissions and their engines. And the 86 cars, they use the Subaru engines, the FA20, FA24 engines. So clearly I could see that there was a departure from Toyota's high stance on reliability. And then they did the Supra, right? Now I love the B58. I've got an entire video on my page saying how reliable the B58 is. But again, the B58 is a BMW with all the BMW electronics, all the BMW plastics. And it's got its own coolant issues, right? So I haven't been happy with that decision too much. And then they did the GR cars, which are fully in-house. These engines, they're rally-built engines, and the GR Yaris, GR Corolla. But again, you know, and I've got a recent video about this as well. I think these engines are just stressed. They're not over-engineered the way Toyota's been over-engineered. My stance on this car remains the same. If it is my water pump that's failed, unfortunate. It's sad because I've only done 55,000 kilometers. This is a defect. I don't expect many of these to fail on every car, but it hasn't really taught me anything new about the nature of these cars. It's sad, but that's kind of where we are with Toyota. So I'll catch up with you again, guys. I'll let you know exactly how the warranty process goes, what happens. I hope that helps. I'll see you next time.